Hello, my name is Reagan Coltharp, and I would like to tell you a few things that I've learned on my journey walking with mental health struggles and mental health challenges. When I was very young, my family used to talk about my grandfather, and they had these softened euphemisms. They would say Papa had delicate nerves, or when Papa had his first nervous breakdown, or they would mention these times or seasons in Papa's life, which what we know now, as looking back, because that's what truth does. Truth is a time traveler. Truth will not only shed light on the present, but truth will shine light on the past. And what we know now is that most likely my grandfather was experiencing a seasonal affect disorder, because it seemed like in the fall and in the spring is when his nerves would be set off. He would experience nervous breakdown kind of thing. And it wasn't something that you talked about a lot, but it was a reality, and we all knew it was there. And we all knew not to drink Papa's special water that was kept in a mason jar in the refrigerator. And it was, hot as all get out. In Texas, we had no air conditioning. And so you would come in hot and thirsty if you were visiting at grandmother's house, and all of the adults would begin to yelp in the other room, "Don't drink Papa's water." And I thought it was because, they love him so much. They want to make sure that, he has nice cold water to drink when he comes in. But no, it was more than that. It was this is what keeps Papa from going off the rails. This is what keeps Papa in a healthy lane. And my father, so that's on my mom's side. On my dad's side, my dad was diagnosed at long last with bipolar disorder. And I lived my whole life with a man who loved God very much, with a man who prayed every day. I could tell how late at night it was when I was a teenager. I could tell how late it was by how many laps I could hear before I fell asleep. And it was my dad walking around our property praying at night. And my dad was sincere in his love for God. My dad was sincere in his love for the Word of God. My dad was a gifted teacher. And my dad struggled with mental health challenges. He could go for a long time without flare-ups, or I don't know what you want to call it. He could go a long time. And in public, he could hold it together. But when it was manifesting, when he was suffering, it came out at home. And so I lived with the tension, because you don't call yourself a survivor, because to survive means it's over and it's done. And with mental health challenges, the kind that we experience in my family, it's not a problem that is solved. It is a tension that we learn to manage. Sometimes we do better than other times. And what I learned was that you can love God and still suffer. You can love the church and still suffer. You can know truth and love truth and still suffer. And I think maybe the culmination of that learning experience, that's not the right word, maybe one of the most important lessons that I learned from my dad's life is that you can love God and love the church and love the Bible and love truth. But if you don't yield to truth, and if you don't put it into practice, it doesn't matter how much you know, and it doesn't matter how much you emotionally love and embrace it. If you don't put shoes on truth and walk with it every day, and if you don't let it contradict your thoughts and your feelings, truth doesn't do you much good in the end. Now, I am by no means an expert on all mental suffering. but I do know what has been helpful for me. And I do have some best practices that I would like to share. And one of them is you have to speak the truth. You have to be honest about what you are experiencing. You have to be honest when you're in sin. You cannot be right with God if you do not speak, if with the mouth, if you do not make repentance come out of your heart, out of your mind, through your mouth, you can't be saved. You can't be set free if you just hold on to it. And I have found that to be true in my walk with mental health challenges, is that when I speak the truth about what's going on, and just like the truth about my sin is ugly and I don't like to say it, the truth about what I am experiencing is also ugly and painful, and I don't like to talk about it. And yet when I do, it rips the cover of darkness off of that, and it exposes the lies, and it exposes what's growing in the darkness that's toxic and poisoning me. And so when I speak the truth about what I'm experiencing, even when the truth is ugly, and even when the truth is, I feel shame, the light always starts the healing process. And so when you speak the truth and you tell somebody, here's what I'm experiencing, then you take away the power that the lie has over you, the lie of what will people think if they know that our family goes to therapy? What if a therapist would never come to the church because they know that somebody like me who goes to that church, has some wonky behaviors or wonky thoughts, and what if that would keep them from going to heaven? I actually have had that thought, and I know other people have too. And it's a lie. It's a lie. And here's how I know that it's a lie, because the truth is I'm not that important. I'm not that special. I can't keep somebody, a helper in the helping profession. I can't keep them from coming to church and loving God. If I was experiencing a heart attack and I went into the ER, I'm not so special that my heart attack, my dysfunctioning heart, cardiovascular system would keep this ER nurse or this ER doctor from ever wanting to go to a church that believes in the healing God. I'm not that powerful. So, exposing that lie of saying someone who's in the helping profession, they're in the helping profession because they know people need help. They're not going to look at you and go, oh, those people are so messed up, you don't dare ever go to their church. Doctors are your friends. Good doctors are your friends. So exposing the lie, so embracing, so speak the truth. And then, so number one, speak the truth. Number two, seek the truth. You're going to have to look for it. You're going to have to go searching for it. You're not going to stumble on it blindly. When the first time that I really realized, it wasn't the first time I had a problem. First time I realized I had a problem. I had made dinner, and I had a 19-year-old who had never eaten gravy. He didn't like the slimy kind of feel in his mouth. And I was in, wonky brain mode. And we sat down to eat dinner, and I'm passing the gravy, and the child says, as he said for 19 years, I don't want any gravy. But what my brain told me that I heard was, Mama, I don't care how hard you work. I don't care that you slaved away to make this dinner, which I didn't slave, I just cooked. But Mama, I don't care. Who are you to tell me that I should try something? I'm 19 years old. I know what I want. Now, that is not what he said, but my feelings told me, and my brain told me that that's what was going on. And I just took myself a scoop of gravy, and I flopped it over on his plate, and I said, try it, you'll like it. And that child didn't do what I did. I treated him with disrespect, and I didn't do right. He didn't treat me back that way. Thank goodness. He pushed his plate back, and he kind of ducked his head, and he said, I think I'm done with dinner. And of course, he hadn't even had a bite yet. And that enraged me. No, that's not the right way to say it. I I threw gas on the fire that was lit in my brain. And what I heard him say, what I heard was, "Oh, I don't think so." And oh, mercy. And I was like, "Argh." And my husband, who is very gentle and very quiet, never raises his voice, except when he's preaching. He tends to yell a bit when he's preaching, but it doesn't, he doesn't in his non-preaching life raise his voice. And he smacked the table, bam, with his hands, and our plates kind of jumped, and all six of us were taken aback. We just, and at first I thought, oh, well, he's gonna tell that boy, if your mama says eat gravy, you need to eat gravy. And instead, he spoke some truth into my life, and he said, we are going to have the fruit of the Spirit in this house. We are going to have peace in this house. You just disrespected him, Rachel, and you owe him an apology. And I wish that I could say that I embraced that truth immediately, but it was a 50-gallon drum of kerosene on the brain fire that was already going. And I stood up and I walked out of the house, and I went outside and I started walking around the neighborhood, and I'm making laps, around the neighborhood, and I'm talking to Jesus, and I'm speaking what I think is truth, and I'm talking to him, and I'm telling him how mistreated I feel and how disrespected I feel. And the Lord only knows what the neighbors thought if they were out, but it was dark. They weren't out. And anyway, I'm walking around, and I get about 3 or 4 laps. And because I did the right thing, which was talk to the Lord about it instead of call one of my friends or, call somebody else and whine and complain about my family, I did go to the Lord. The Lord pulled back the curtain of the darkness, and he shined some light of truth right down into my heart. And it struck me, I'm telling you, a sword through my chest would not have struck me to the core any deeper than the truth of that. And it was blinding to me, and I saw it in an instant. I am the problem. And I got mental clarity, and those feelings fell away, and those wonky thoughts fell away, and I saw it for what it was. And oh man, that's painful. So I went back in the house and I apologized to my family, and I sat down at the table and I said, y'all, I am so sorry. I'm sorry. Apologize to my son, apologize to all the kids, and they're all sitting there quiet, great big eyes. And I said, I don't know why I did that. I'm like, I've never done anything like that. And then some more truth comes out. And one of my children, emboldened by his father, I suppose, one of my children said, yes, you do, Mama. And I was blind. I'm telling you, blindsided. And I said to them, please tell me the truth. Do I treat you disrespectfully? And they all 4 said, yes, you do. And so my husband, he listened to all of it. And then he said to me, something is not right. And it hasn't been right for a while. And I don't know what it is, but we're not going to live like this. And I want you to make a doctor's appointment. Something is not right. And I was just crushed, It's terrible to find out that you're the problem. It's so much easier when somebody else is the problem. So I went to the doctor and got a blood panel workup, and lo and behold, if 2 things. First of all, my thyroid is dead. So no wonder I could barely drag myself around. No energy, and here I'm trying to homeschool 4 kids, and got a little kid and teenagers, and no wonder my physical body was slap worn out. I'm in adrenal failure, and I'm in full-blown menopause at age 42. So it wasn't good. 42. I'm not good with math. I'll have to figure it out. 40 something. Well, we figured out it had been 3 years. Sorry. So anyway, so I get on all the drugs. I need help for my adrenal failure. I need thyroid medicine. And because for 3 years, I had been deteriorating in my brain with my brain chemicals and my other body chemicals. I was to a place where I was so low. The doctor said, how often do you cry? I'm like, every day. And it didn't even dawn on me that wasn't normal. I thought I'm crying every day because how hard my life is. This is normal. Turns out, y'all, that's not normal. So long story short, because people spoke truth into my life, and because I sought some truth and went to a doctor and got some help, everything got better. Now, again, it's not a problem to be solved, because there are times when my husband will still say to me, babe, I'm not living like this. You need to go, see what's going on with your levels. But because people will speak truth to me, and because I will receive truth, even though it doesn't feel like it's right, and even though I don't think it, I don't feel it, I choose to believe them, and I choose to go find out what's going on. My life, it got better, and all my kids' life, they got better. And there are times when I still have to go and get adjustments. And there have been times when I have needed more help. I've needed brain chemical help. And when I need it, I take it. And it may be that I'll need it again. But thankfully, truth has made my life better. People speaking the truth to me speaking the truth, and me seeking for the truth. You could have a deficiency. Your thyroid, your brain chemicals could be off. You might have if you're anemic, if you don't have enough iron, you will be depressed. Speaking tongues and fasting, your belly button touches your backbone. You're still going to have some depression if you don't have enough D3 and if you don't have enough iron. If you've got pneumonia and the Lord chooses not to heal you, you can fast and pray and still die of a lung infection. But an antibiotic could cure you. Why? All truth is God's truth. Antibiotics kill the bacteria. If God doesn't choose to override the bacteria, it doesn't dishonor him for you to take an antibiotic and it to kill the bacteria. You get to keep living. You get to keep teaching Sunday school. You get to keep picking up little children for church. You get to keep doing God's work longer. So seek truth and let it help you. And last of all, embrace truth. It wouldn't matter when I went to the doctor. It wouldn't matter if the doctor had been able to lay out all my panels and say, here's where your brain chemistry is off. Here's where your blood levels are off. Here's where your thyroid levels are off. If I didn't take those pills every day, take them in Jesus' name. I believe for healing. I've seen people get healed. But I also need corrective lenses, and God hasn't chosen to heal me from my eye problems. And when I got old and needed readers, he has chosen to let my eyes continue on their natural deterioration path. And so I wear readers. And so I take my pills. And I'm thankful for them, because I'm able to function in this world, and I'm able to function, and hopefully I'm able to be a blessing in my local church and to my family, because I'm able to function better because of the broken body that I live in and the deterioration of my systems. I'm able to have some outside help and some tools that have helped me. My daughter will tell her own story. I'm not here to tell her story. I will tell you that watching my daughter suffer mental challenges, hers are different than mine. Mine manifest with depression and anger and feelings that lie to me and tell me the world is better off without me, and that if I weren't here, things would be better for everyone. And so mine are different than hers. Hers manifests with anxiety and with depression. So she's learned to manage. She's learning to manage hers. I am still working on managing mine. And here's what I know is that every broken place in our life, every crack, every chip, every broken place, what maybe the enemy means for evil, I don't know if I can even blame the enemy. I think, in my case, it happens to be genetics, but what the enemy would like to exploit for evil, God can bring good out of it. And every broken place in my life has been one more place that the glory of God could shine through and could bring a little hope and healing maybe to somebody else. If you or someone you love experiences mental health challenges, please take these 3 steps and let it help you on your journey. Number 1, tell the truth. And when someone tells you the truth, believe them and listen to them and get them help. Number 2, seek the truth. Go to a doctor and find out what is going on. It could be something as simple as you need B12. It could be D3. It could be thyroid medicine. It could be you might need iron. It could be that you need something else. But man, find out. Seek the truth. Number 3, embrace the truth. Lean into it. And if you have a broken bone, put a cast on it and bless that cast in Jesus' name. And thank God for the doctors who've learned how to set bones and the people who learned how to make plaster. If you need thyroid medicine, thank the good Lord that somebody, went into endocrinology and that they learned about your body. Thank God for the people who make the things that can bring you back closer to garden living. We can't live in the garden, but we could get a little closer than where we are now. And my hope for you is that you will shine a light of hope and healing into somebody else's life, and that none of our pain is wasted, and that anything we've experienced, any tensions we've learned to manage, maybe we'll pass that knowledge on to somebody else and make their life a little bit easier, make their journey a little less strenuous, and make their path a little more smooth. And that's my hope for you.
Hi, my name is Reagan Coltharp, and my walk with mental health has been an ongoing journey. As my mother has touched on, mental health isn't just something you wake up and you're over one day. If one day seems like too much, then try focusing on 1 hour. If 1 hour is too much, then try 1 minute. And if 1 minute is too much, try 1 breath. There's been many times where focusing simply on breathing in and breathing out has done a lot of good in my life. Did you know that 2 people can go through the exact same experience and only one of them can end up being traumatized by it? They can have the same exact traumatic experience and only one is traumatized. And the reason that one is traumatized is because of the care they received immediately after that experience. You will experience things in your life that can knock you down and destroy you. But it is not the experiences that you have that will determine your destination. It is how you react to those experiences. Meeting the experiences you have with mental health with truth will determine your destination. Something that I struggle a lot with sometimes is intrusive thoughts. Now, you may have those and know what they are, but just in case you don't, intrusive thoughts are thoughts that you do not intentionally have. So when you walk throughout your day, you have an ongoing flow of thoughts. So there are conscious thoughts and subconscious thoughts. So telling my hand to move while I talk is subconscious. Opening the door when I'm wanting to walk through it, telling my feet to walk, put one foot in front of the other. Those are subconscious thoughts. They can be conscious thoughts, but most of the time they're subconscious. Telling my lips and my mouth to move, to talk, those are subconscious thoughts. They can be conscious, but most of the time they're subconscious. Now, intrusive thoughts are thoughts that pop into your mind that say things that try to disguise themselves as subconscious thoughts. So when you think about things, like when you analyze the world around you, like, oh, that's green. Oh, the chair over there, that's brown. Those are thoughts that you have. You're processing the world around you. Intrusive thoughts disguise themselves as your own processing thoughts, but they're not thoughts that you have. Either you have intentionally or thoughts that you are even aware of. So intrusive thoughts that I've had before are, you don't really love God. You've been pretending your entire life just because You love the people who you go to church with, and you put on this grand show. And another one that I've had before is, the people who say you love don't actually love you. They're just pretending because it benefits them in some way, or you can do something for them. It makes them feel better about themselves, or you don't really love anybody in your life. It just makes you feel better about yourself. These thoughts are not true at all, and yet they're disguised in between the constant flow of thoughts. I describe my thoughts that I have every day as my mind river. So when things happen in my life, they're like either rocks or boulders that go in my mind river. There's constantly water flowing, and intrusive thoughts are kind of like rocks or boulders. And depending on how severe they are or how big they are, the impact that they have on my life, they can clog up my river. Now, my job is to deal with these things, to process them. So say, I don't really love God. I'm just in church for a show. I never loved God before. Christianity's a joke, right? So that is an intrusive thought that I've had before. I've severely struggled with my faith before and fought for my faith. And whenever something like that pops into my mind, it is my job to go into my mind river, to pick that up and look at it and to sort through that. Because if I don't deal with intrusive thoughts, it will pile up and my mind will get flooded, and then I become overwhelmed. So intrusive thoughts are one way of dealing with, mental health. In 2 Corinthians 10, Paul addresses the Corinthian church, showing them that spiritual warfare is in the mind. They're to bring every thought into captivity in obedience to Christ. In Romans 12, Paul calls for us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Renew in English is to resume after an interruption. When our thoughts are interrupted by lies, we are to meet them with truth. If we do not meet intrusive thoughts with truth, then we allow them to embed themselves into our identity, but poisoning our mental state. Well, not everything you deal with is the devil trying to grab you in a chokehold, but where you are weakest is where he's going to attack you. If I'm not careful to check my thoughts with truth, he's going to try and slip in there and destroy me. We know that about the enemy. There are very few times where the enemy has had enough power or authority to move the physical things in our world. There's only times of possession where people have allowed themselves to even be possessed. But what he can do is lie to us. It is up to us to believe those lies. So the next time you're going through a hard time, one thing you can do is take a critical look at what you've been thinking. Ask yourself questions. Are these thoughts true? What does the Bible say about these things? Do these thoughts help me or do they hurt me? Am I sabotaging myself? Your thoughts will shape your identity. Struggling with mental health, that doesn't define who you are as a person, just like struggling with physical health doesn't define who you are as a person. It doesn't make you a bad person, an unloving or an unkind person to struggle with mental health. You can be an unloving and unkind person that struggles with mental health, but that doesn't make you an unloving or unkind person. Do not scream every thought that you have from the rooftop or on Facebook, but also don't keep them locked away because you're scared about what people might think of you. For some reason, I thought that struggling in silence was me being strong for other people. If you think about it, when you're vulnerable, when you do what is hardest, that's really what strength is, right? To have courage and to be brave enough to expose the vulnerable parts of yourself, the parts where you are weakest, that is strength. So when you're struggling, don't be afraid to ask for help. Struggling is not who you are. Struggling is something that you're going through, but you can't do it alone. But I thought that my struggles were who I was. Even before I realized that mental health was what I was struggling with. In kindergarten, at the age of 6, I remember the first times I felt anxiety. At the time, I didn't know what it was. In middle school, every time there was a special event, like a class party or a test, a church event, anxious thoughts swamped my brain, and dumped adrenaline and cortisol, which are stress hormones, into my body, causing me like to have stomach cramps and have such physical distress that I would start vomiting. So what I thought was happening is I'm sick. So whenever I was like, I'm having a stomach ache, I'm vomiting, I can't go to school. I didn't realize that it had anything to do with what's going on up here. All I realized is what's going on. I feel bad. I can't go. I had no idea there was a correlation between my mental state and my physical state. So I ended up missing out on some of the most special events in my childhood for years due to this mysterious sickness. Well, we know now that it was stress-induced, but at the time it seemed like everything was against me. Even the things that I'd looked forward to for years dangled in front of me, only to be snatched away by stomach pain. And it looked like everybody else was able to freely enjoy life while I was suffering on the sidelines. And even when nothing was happening, I was having anxiety. We would go to grocery stores and my mom would tell me to ask a clerk something and I'd be like, yeah, I'll be right back. And so I would walk to another aisle and I would wait a couple minutes and then I'd come back and be like, oh, sorry, they said they're all out, or they don't carry that anymore, which I now realize is lying and I've repented. But I didn't realize that I was lying at the time. I just couldn't process. I didn't have enough self-reflection to realize I was avoiding something because it was painful for me. And it wasn't just strangers at a grocery store. I remember there'd be times when I went to my aunt's house and someone would ask me if I wanted something to eat or drink. And I'd say no. And even times where I remember vividly being desperately thirsty and I would say no. And when they would go into a different room or something, I would sneak around and get some water or something. And my aunt only lived a mile away from me my entire childhood. And this wasn't a constant feeling. There would be times where I would say yes, or I would eat everything in my aunt's house. So it wasn't consistent, but there were times where I was immobilized by these feelings. And I didn't know what they were. And I didn't realize I was the only one who felt, I thought everybody felt this way. I didn't realize they were abnormal. I just thought it was who I was. And looking back, there was a lot of times I acted out in school because of this anxious energy. It wasn't always closing in on myself. I would stand up on desks and dance and draw attention to myself in ways that I didn't do it for the attention, but I had to like release all the tension, so I would act out erratically and say things loudly and just get all of that out. And then in my teenage years, I started to get depressed. So when I was 12, I started to cut myself. I felt hopeless and like I didn't belong. And I had always had a high pain tolerance. And there are times where if you're depressed, you may come to a point of apathy where you're so desperate just to feel anything at all that you will harm yourself just to feel pain. And I confessed to my mom, who took me to a Christian therapist who specialized in self-harm. But I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't tell my mom because I wanted help. I didn't tell my mom because I wanted attention. So I reluctantly went, but I wouldn't open up. And I convinced her I was over it and I wouldn't do it again just to get out of there. And after that, I made sure that I wouldn't cut where she would see. And for the next 4 years, I struggled with depression. And on top of that, I continued to struggle with anxiety. And by the time I turned 16, I was so worn down mentally that I was exhausted. I remember standing on the platform of my church singing our praise songs that I'd known since I was a child. On the platform that I'd watched my father and my grandfather preach from for as long as I could remember. And as we sang, I would plead silently in my head, God, help me not kill myself. Because I realized that I was close, but at the same time, I was so tired of being in pain. And I said that over and over until the songs were done. And nothing changed. And so when I went to sit down, opened my journal, and I wrote, I'm going to kill myself this week. And once I wrote that down, all of the pain that I had been feeling, all the fighting and the desperation and the grasping for something to hold on to, all of it just released. And it was this quiet sort of peace. With calm, really, not peace. Because when you're exhausted from struggling, giving up feels good for a moment, but only for a moment. What I wasn't thinking about was what was gonna happen afterwards. I wasn't thinking about heaven or hell. I wasn't thinking about what my family would say. I wasn't thinking about who would miss me. I was just tired of trying. And I had no intention of telling anybody because I wasn't doing it for attention. I just didn't want it. I didn't want to struggle anymore. And so when I wrote that down, I was done. But God was not done with me. So that next morning, I was getting dressed for an internship that I had been participating in for the last couple of months at a dentist office, and I walked out of my room into the hall and I told my mother, I can't do it anymore. And I wasn't trying to even talk to her. We were just passing through in the hallway and those words just came out of my mouth. I wasn't trying to tell her anything, and she asked, what can't you do? And I said, live. I wasn't particularly feeling miserable, but the words poured out in me anyway. The desperate prayer that I prayed on Sunday was answered, even though I felt like it wasn't when I prayed it. I hoped for a lightning bolt, a mental and emotional deliverance. But God chose to answer in a quiet voice of letting me speak the ugly truth. And it ripped off the cover of the darkness and let the light shine in and allowed me to get the help I needed. I wanted it to just be done with. I wanted to stop struggling. I wanted it to be over. But He allowed it to be shown the next day and to walk with me to get better. God tells long stories. So my mom listened to me and she took me seriously. And so I did the doctor, and she immediately took me to an inpatient care for a week, followed by a month of outpatient care. And I started medicine and attended sessions to help me find names for the thoughts and emotions I was experiencing my entire life. So it was like a light turned on. I didn't know I was experiencing anxiety, and then I found names and realized that I wasn't the only one, and realized I wasn't crazy. I mean, there is hope for the first time that I didn't have to do it alone, or didn't have to do it anymore. I realized that I had been living in darkness, that it wasn't just who I was, that I wasn't just stuck there. There was a way out, all in God's truth. And sometimes He uses medical and mental health professionals to speak truth into our lives. So if you need help, get help. If you're not sure, at least talk to someone, and they'll let you know if you don't need help. Trust me. Be honest. God can handle your honesty. The Sunday after being discharged from inpatient care changed my life. I had decided roughly a week earlier that there was nothing in this world worth living for. And yet, here I still was. In my darkest moment, I cried out to God, and I thought he didn't hear me. I knew the truth. I was raised in a pastor's home. My grandfather was the bishop at the church. You can be surrounded by truth and still struggle with mental health. I knew God was good. I knew he loved people, but I didn't live for him. That Sunday I realized that there's nothing in this world worth living for him, but for him. And I realized it for myself. Our loving Creator, who cares for us, listened to the desperate, unspoken prayer from a teenage girl and changed her life. The Creator that died for me and died for you. That is what has kept me. And yet still I have to maintain that mental health. There are physical defaults that won't be changed until God comes back. And we get glorified bodies, but I don't walk alone anymore. I'm still learning and growing, and there are hard days and weeks and sometimes months. But if you can hold on to hope and you can hold on to him, that will make the difference. Whatever struggles you find yourself in, God is for you. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. Struggling with mental health issues does not make you exempt from that. You are not broken because you struggle. You are not less than because you struggle. You are not unworthy because you struggle. You are loved and you are enough. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. There are people who walk by you in the halls of this conference center that have dealt with and might be dealing with currently mental battles right now. In 2020, I was asked to speak about part of my testimony for the UPCI, and after that video was released, hundreds of ministers reached out to me and shared their own personal struggles with mental health. You are not alone. God will walk with you in green pastures by still waters and through the valley of the shadow of death. God is here with you, and he will walk with you every step of the way. Even after I decided to keep living, I still struggled with mental health. Depression has come and gone. Anxiety is something I have to carefully monitor, but I don't do it alone. I have a family that loves me, a husband that loves me, friends that know what I'm going through and that support me, and I love them. Do not confuse your identity with the circumstances and situations you live in. Your identity is what will still be there when God comes and takes us. It's who you are designed to be, and that's his. I know that my God is a healer, and he didn't decide to heal me that day, but he did decide to walk with me and keep me every step of the way. And I'm thankful for it. So as he walks with you, lean on him and lean on others. You're not alone.